So we've spent two videos now discussing what a prostaglandin is. We started off just general defining a prostaglandin and showing you the skeletal template of the structure. And then we went through and talked about some of the things that prostaglandins do. And we said they're really involved in everything from sleep-wake cycle to blood pressure regulation to inflammation to fever. You name it, prostaglandins are probably going to be involved. Well, I can inhibit prostaglandin production. And one of the common ways that I can do that is through something called an NSAID. And an NSAID stands for a non steroidal anti inflammatory drug. And there's a group of NSAIDs out there that you're very familiar with. And this basically is your aspirin. We're all familiar with aspirin. Take once a day, right? One a day, because this will help prevent some blood clotting. And we know that blood clotting is basically dealt with prostaglandin use. So, if your prostaglandins are out of sync and you have this blood clotting, or let's say that you're just at a point where your blood is kind of thick, or you've got a lot of cholesterol that's built up in your arteries and you want to make sure that your blood doesn't clot, or you're coming out of surgery, and when you come out of surgery, you're laying on that bed and you're not moving, you can set up blood clots in your legs and feet and everything else in between. So, aspirin is basically going in and doing a job. And aspirin, take one a day because it prevents blood clots. Well, it has an affinity to these prostaglandins, and we need to talk about how aspirin does its job, and some of these other NSAIDs do their job as well. So aspirin, like many NSAIDs, inhibit the production of prostaglandins. So fever goes down when you take an aspirin. Inflammation goes down when you take aspirin. Blood clots, the rate or the encounter of getting one goes down when you take aspirin. So, aspirin's not the only one out there, though. Acetyl salicylic acid, of course, is aspirin. You've worked with it already, you've made it already, you've tested it already. We've worked quite a bit with aspirin. But there's other anti inflammatory drugs as well. And this is something that we know as ibuprofen, aka Tylenol, or I'm sorry, aka Advil, Motrin, that is ibuprofen. We also see naproxen being used as well, and naproxen is things like Aleve. So you know it as Aleve, we know it as naproxen. Ibuprofen, you know it as Advil, or you also know it as Motrin. And then we have, of course, aspirin as well. So all of these are very common NSAIDs, anti-inflammatory drugs, and they all inhibit the synthesis of prostaglandins. What they do is that they compete with arachidonic acid for what we call the enzyme binding site. So let me come down here and draw you a picture of what goes on. So here I'm just going to draw a blob, and I'm going to write NSAID. And we're going to pretend like this is the structure of aspirin or Advil or naproxen, any of those that we have listed up there before. This is the NSAID structure. And then we said that prostaglandins are made by using something called a cyclooxygenase, right? So I'm just going to draw a straight line here, and then off of this is a group that we want to pay attention to. So this is called cyclooxygenase. Cyclooxygenase. This is an enzyme, and an enzyme basically means protein, and a protein basically means amino acids. So this big glob is just part of a big old protein, and off of this protein is one particular group important, and that's a CH2 OH group, and this is a serine. So what happens is that when we take aspirin or Advil or Motrin or Aleve, this compound goes into our body. This compound sees this cyclooxygenase, and cyclooxygenase is the precursor for arachidonic acid changing into a prostaglandin. Cyclooxygenase is the one that makes that happen. It's the assembly factory worker that takes arachidonic acid and changes it to the prostaglandin that we're maybe interested in preventing because we don't want our fever to go up. So what happens is that the NSAID goes in, it looks for the serine group, and off of this serine group it modifies it. So this OH goes away, and then we get another group that attaches here. And I'm just going to put that in brackets because it could be a number of different things. If this was aspirin, it would be the acetyl group that goes there and attaches to that serine. So aspirin goes in, it acylates that serine group, and when it does that, this enzyme becomes inactive. And when the enzyme becomes inactive, no PGs are made any longer. So your body cannot send out the PGs. So that means your body cannot help those blood clots form. Your body cannot give you a fever to fight off the infection. Your body can't do a number of different things if the PG production stops. And this is the way that aspirin in particular works. Now, aspirin and other NSAIDs inhibit all prostaglandins, A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs, all of them under the roof. So these not only target the prostaglandins though, but sometimes the other families that come along with prostaglandins that we've not mentioned. So it will go in, it will attack, it will destroy, and because it destroys that enzyme, it stops production on the PG molecules itself. There's a new kind of NSAID that's out on the market called Celebrex, and depending on the year that you watch this, Celebrex might not be the newest thing that's out on the market, but Celebrex is relatively new. It inhibits only the enzyme that produces prostaglandin in response to inflammation. So that's it. You can take Celebrex. It only prevents the inflammation from happening, and it allows everything else to take place. All the other ones target all the prostaglandins. So if you're going to get rid of one of them, you got to get rid of all of them. Celebrex works by a different mechanism. And not only that, but inflammation conditions can now be treated without these serious side effects if you take Celebrex. As with any medication, though, you're always going to have side effects to the medicine. But this is a way that we are starting to control some of the on and off switches that we want with prostaglandin production. So let's say that we only want the fever to go down, but we want everything else to take place. We want to be pained. We want to feel that pain in our big toe, but let's say that I've got a fever and I want that to go away. Well, we can start targeting drugs now that only behave with one specific prostaglandin, and the use of that prostaglandin. No longer do we have to take an NSAID and stop production across the board. So it gives us some control over it. And if you want to know more about prostaglandin use and the different types of prostaglandins that are out there, you can easily find those sources on the internet. But for us, we're not a medicinal chemistry course. We're not a nutritionist class. We are not really a full-blown biochemistry course. What we are is just introducing lipids. We're talking about prostaglandin production. We want to know what prostaglandins are used for, and we want to know why when we take an aspirin, prostaglandin production stops. And this is good enough for us. This is all that we need to take away from the table. So this is going to sum up prostaglandins. and the term of NSAID. We'll say that on the test, be expected to probably discuss the purpose of a prostaglandin, what does it do, and be able to talk about an NSAID. What does NSAID stand for? And how does an NSAID do its job? So it takes a look at the cyclooxygenase and it shuts it down. So that way arachidonic acid cannot be converted to a prostaglandin.